Well, good afternoon, and I think you know how this works. We will follow the same pattern that we did this morning for our public testimony section. Again, we ask that comments be limited to 2 minutes each, and we'll just go to microphone and work through as many people as we possibly can that would like to provide a comment. And so with that, we will start right over here.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Bourne, and I'm here today representing Food and Water Watch. We want to thank the Department of Justice and USDA for holding these hearings and dedicating the important time and energy necessary to investigate these matters. We, along with 32,000 other petitioners who've signed a petition we submitted recently, urge the Department of Justice and USDA to continue to take action to investigate and change the antitrust situation for agriculture. We submitted 32,000 names, as Sienna from Why Hunger mentioned earlier today. So other organizations have worked together to submit over 240,000 signatures urging action. That's over 250,000 people who are concerned about how corporate control is affecting their food choices, affecting farmers' abilities to make a living, affecting what they see on the ground every day, affecting low-income people. We want to urge the DOJ and USDA to implement the GIPSA rule, a message that I hope has come through loud and clear from several people who've spoken today. We also urge you to complete the look-back investigation over agribusiness mergers that occurred over the last decade, and also to work with the FTC to include food retail and processing in your investigations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is David Hutchins. I'm from Ohio. I started raising cattle in 1955. Plus, over the years, my wife and I and our families raised thousands of head of sheep, hogs, and cattle. The one thing I've heard here today is I haven't heard anybody come here asking for a handout. Well, all we're asking for is a fair market. The hog guy here from Iowa, he must do a really good job. He must treat his cooperators right, and he lives in a particular area. But I used to raise from fair to finish as a family operation, 4,000 head of hogs from fair to finish. You know why I can't now? All the auction markets I took them to are gone. All the local hog markets are gone. Hindholding hog markets are gone. There's not a packer in the state of Ohio that kills many hogs. There's not a packer in the state of Ohio that can kill a 50,000-pound load of cattle. But yet, Wood County, Ohio fed more fat cattle than anybody in the United States years ago. Washington and Knox County were the largest sheep producers in the United States. Fayette and Clinton County used to be the two largest, except for near Quincy, Illinois. I can't think of the county in Illinois, were the largest hog producers. We have lost all the feeders in Northwest Ohio. A 90-year-old guy called me last week, and he said, Dave, I'm 90 years old, I'm broke. We're having to put our farms up for auction. We used to feed thousands of head of cattle. We used to own 600 acres of ground. We used to own one of the largest livestock yards in Ohio. And here, after all that work and everything, I'm now broke. It's not that we're asking for a handout. It's all that we're asking for is our share of the market and a fair playing field. We talk about Walmart and these big companies. It's up to the Justice Department what you do to them, not me. We do live in a democracy, in a capitalistic society where everyone should be able to make money. If we can work together, and I want to thank you for letting me get up here to the microphone today and holding this event today, but because it proves that democracy is still working. I have 6 children and 16 grandchildren. I spent my own money to come here today. My wife took off work to take care of the cattle. She also babysits the grandchildren and everything else. That's my problem. I don't care about that. I thought it was worth the time to come. But if we look at the future, and as Christine Varney said, even the security of this country, the foundation of this country, and 50% of the GNP is agriculture, and the foundation is the family farmer. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kenny Fox. I'm president of the South Dakota Stock Growers Association. We wholeheartedly support these rules and appreciate what you are trying to accomplish for us. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story about my life and my family. My wife and I are both third-generation cattle producers. I got started in the business in 1973. It took 12 calves to buy a brand new pickup. Today it takes 40 to 50. I haven't been able to purchase a new one since 2001. Yes, we've got an increase in prices this year, and I'm grateful for it. And I think it's due to the fact that USDA and Department of Justice has been investigating our markets. Thank you for doing that. With that said, in 2005, we received the highest prices we ever got for our cattle. This year, we got $100 a head less. In 2005, our input costs were considerably less than they are today. The prices received today don't necessarily reflect what it takes to keep an operation going. And so we need a better price to stay in business. I've been in business for 37 years, and I'm grateful to be in business that long, but I've seen a lot of my friends and neighbors that couldn't survive. And I don't know why we have, because with these prices, it's very difficult to do that. At the same time, in 2005, when we received these high prices for our calves, choice retail beef was at $4.09 a pound. We received $100 a head less, as I stated before, for our calves this fall, and in June of 2010, the choice retail meat price was at a near record of $4.49 a pound. So producers like myself are being gouged as well as consumers. And we need enforcement of the Packers and Stockyards Act. Thank you.
I'm Peter Carstensen from the University of Wisconsin Law School. I'm sorry that Christine has left. I had a chance yesterday to speak directly to John Leibowitz in a public meeting push him a little bit about the FTC's side of this equation, and I have a sense that there may be more responsiveness there. But I take it, Mark and John, you have access to your superiors, and the real central question right now at the end of this meeting is what the USDA and the division are going to do about the issues that have been raised. Right now, I'd have to say that we are seeing movement at the USDA and inertia at the Justice Department. USDA has the PSA rules underway. I understand that the Dairy Advisory Committee is considering some reforms of the milk marketing order system that could address some of the serious problems there. From the division, on the other hand, we have in the dairy area a modest merger case. But we also have a major investigation that was commenced a number of years ago by the division, which has been updated substantially by private litigation, to which the division can have access at its request. And the division, so far as I know, has failed totally to take advantage of that to understand what has been going on in dairy markets for the last 3 or 4 years. Moreover, those private cases are now on the verge of being settled, so private parties are going to be deciding what is the shape of dairy markets in the near future. The Justice Department definitely needs to get into that area so that it's not ignorant of the issues and knows what's going on. With respect to seed technology, the department is allegedly looking for a monopoly case to bring. There is one that it has been investigating for a substantial period of time. The investigation has gone on long enough. It needs to either to say that there is a violation that it wants to pursue or acknowledge that it does not believe the antitrust laws can get at that kind of monopoly. Today I heard some very plausible kinds of information with respect to both beef and poultry that I would hope Bill Stallings has run out of here to start an investigation on. If so, it'll be the first word of any investigation from the Justice Department in the beef or poultry area so far. It's time, in other words, now that the hearings are over, for the Justice Department to get to work.
name is Becky Kierstas, and I'm the Program Director for the Contract Agriculture Reform Program for the Rural Advancement Foundation International USA, which is a nonprofit organization based out of North Carolina. And today, we have many poultry growers here in the crowd, everyone with, not the Cowboys hat on, but the ball caps, the blue ball caps, are all contract poultry growers from Virginia and West Virginia. And we also have some from Alabama as well, as we really appreciate them taking their time to come and listen to this final workshop. You know, I've had the really the great opportunity to travel throughout the Southeast once the GIPSA proposed rules came out and listen and talk with growers about what these new proposed rules would do. And you know, most of the growers that I spoke with, they were very pleased with the rules. Actually, they were ecstatic that finally somebody in the Department of Justice, the Department of Agriculture, finally realized the abuses that they are under and actually are doing something about it. They felt that they are actually addressing protecting their investments, protecting them against retaliation, and making sure their pay is based on what the grower does and not the company decisions. Valerie touched on part of that on the other end, that the company can decide the amount of feed and the weight of the birds. However, the company decisions in terms of the inputs that they get on the front end makes a large difference in how much they are paid and ultimately, unfortunately, if they are eventually cut off with $1 million investment left hanging. However, many of these growers that I spoke with that were ecstatic about the rules and felt like they would directly impact and improve their lives were afraid to even sign a comment because of how easy it is for a company to ensure that they're paid less, thousands of dollars less, or even cut off, again, with $1 million investment hanging over their head just for submitting a comment. This should not happen in America, but it is. These companies were also directly intimidating growers to sign comments against the rules by having their field service people come out and say, you need to sign this, not telling them what it was, and the grower knew that the field service person knew if they didn't sign it that they were supporting the rules and they might be retaliated against. So USDA and Department of Justice can do things right now to solve this. Publish the final GIPSA livestock rule, be proactive in enforcing this and other packers and stockyards regulations through collection of information and investigations instead of having individual growers file complaints because of retaliation. Issue a final report on the amount of regional competition in the poultry industry and use this regional measure when examining mergers in the poultry industry. And finally, collect and publicly report income that poultry growers make, just like beef and cattle producers. Thank you.
I'm Kathy Ozer, and I work with the National Family Farm Coalition here in Washington, D.C. And basically, the last two comments, both what Becky just discussed about poultry and about GIPSA, and the earlier comment by Professor Peter Carstensen around action on dairy and really seeing some movement quickly on these issues is the core of my comments right now. Joel Greeno, who spoke earlier today and has spoken at earlier events, has just left to take his plane to get home so he can be milking his cows at 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. The level of desperation that I think has been reflected today and reinforced by comments of both Secretary Vilsack and both the Department of Justice speakers as well, that they've heard across the country, is deepening as winter comes on and the holidays. We are dealing with farmers who are in some of the worst conditions that they've felt in 20 years, and that the need for government to take action and to be proactive and to move forward on these issues has never been greater. So I know there's been, I think today, a really good opportunity for public comment, a really good opportunity for the panels to get at some of the issues that haven't been addressed as much during the earlier sessions, and really hope that going into 2011 we will see real action on these issues and not a continuation of discussions or studies or excuses, but given the political realities and the economic conditions facing farmers, their families, and their communities, we really need to see that movement forward as soon as possible. So thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this, and we know that doing these kinds of events are not easy, but at this moment they're the most critical thing that is being done on these issues by the government, and we look forward to working closely and seeing the next steps and working with you on those. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maggieellengerlock. I am a 3L law student at CUNY School of Law in New York, and I'm involved with a lot of different organizations, but I'm here today just representing myself. My comments are brief and maybe a little activisty. We've heard from a lot of different stakeholders today and from many different perspectives, but the audience response has without question been most positive to the voices that are supportive of food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is defined as democratic control over the food system. The world wants food sovereignty. Look to La Via Campesina, the world's largest social movement, for evidence of this. The people of the United States want it too. Can we get a commitment from the USDA, the DOJ, and the people in this room to give the people what we want? The people want democratic control over the food system. We demand food sovereignty.
My name is Mike Weaver, and I'm here representing poultry growers in Virginia and West Virginia. I want to start out by thanking USDA and DOJ for holding these workshops. I think you've made history here, but the true test of whether it's all going to be worth it is what you do with it. So we're hoping you take this information and act on what you've gathered here. I also wanted to thank the non-government organizations that are here supporting us. We appreciate you folks. You do a lot for us. Thank you. This workshop was supposed to be about the retail disparity in what the farmer receives for their hard work and the retail price of food that consumers pay. Well, Valerie Ruddle was up there earlier today trying to explain about a receipt, and I want to give you a little bit more detail about it. We have a copy of a receipt from KFC for a 16-piece chicken meal that was purchased in Virginia. And that 16-piece chicken meal cost $36.99. Well, out of that $36.99, the company who sold that chicken to KFC made $5 to $6. KFC made about $30. The grower who raised that chicken made 40 cents. Now think about that. Out of $36.99, the grower got 40 cents. Quite a disparity there, huh? Currently, we have no say in our contracts. They're take it or leave it. We're forced to compete against each other based on the inputs that the companies supply to us that we have no say in. And just in general, the way that poultry is produced in this country is not fair. It needs to be changed. I thought it was curious that the grocer representatives that were here today on this panel, I don't recall one of them mentioning the farmer and his situation. You know, none of them try to explain the fact that the farmers haven't had an increase in how many years? Way too long. I think the new gypsy rules have been mentioned today. I think overall they're good. They need some amendments. We've suggested some amendments and some clarification to them, and I think they are to be enacted as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the chance to comment, and for the Department of Justice and USDA for holding these hearings. I rise in support of the new gypsy rules that have been proposed. I'm a cattle producer. I'm Bob Fortune from western South Dakota. I'm a cow-calf yearling operation, and as the way things go, I'm very nervous in front of a microphone in case you haven't noticed. But our cost of production has increased steadily for the last few years, and the last couple of years went up dramatically, and our costs, or what we're receiving for our product, has gone up just slightly. And if it keeps going this way, then we'll be out of business too. But as you look across rural America, all the small towns, half Main Street is boarded up because There's no money coming back into the rural communities from agriculture, from production. It's all going out into the big mega corporations who are siphoning this money off into Wall Street, the way it seems to me. So I'm supportive of the new GIPS rules, and I thank you for the chance to comment.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Mugar, and I'm with Farm Aid, and I've been before you both before in Madison, and I'll be very brief, but I do want to say, I think Mike Weaver said it all in a way, and he said, is this all going to be worth it? And I think it would be, we all are here today, people have come with great difficulty. Farmers from all over the country have been coming for 9 or 10 months now, and it's been an opportunity that we hugely appreciate. But I think communicating with all of us as quickly as possible what is going to be done, and I know it's different for different areas of your work and for your follow-up, but I think it's hugely important because we really, really need to know when things are going to be happening and what is going to be happening. As Kathy pointed out, it's very dire in a lot of sectors, and people have poured their hearts out to you, for which I'm sure you're very grateful. But we really need to know soon. We need to know, as you know, what you're going to be doing. Thank you so much.
My name is Jerry Turner, and I'm a poultry and beef cattle producer from the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I think the average American citizen does not understand and have a clue that the challenges that the American farmer faces today. Unfortunately, I think the federal government is in that same shape. I don't think they quite understand our challenges either. You know, there's been a lot of good information shared here today, and I think we can say from that information that we as American farmers are not receiving our fair share of the markets. Something that maybe has not been bought out is our investment. We have a huge amount of money tied up in our land, our livestock, our equipment, our time, and our labor. And I'm not sure that, or in fact I know that we're not receiving the return on that investment that we should. You know, the American people here enjoy the most abundant food supply in the world, the safest and the cheapest food supply in the world, but yet the American farmer is struggling financially. Now, there's something wrong with that picture. Things need to change, and they need to change quick, or else you may have to put the American farmer on the endangered species list. Thank you.
I'm Vaughn Meyer. I feel a little guilty using this again today and taking the spot up, but first off, I shouldn't be here. It's not because there's something to do at home. It's because in 1980, I almost lost my place. We came close to losing it by the skin of our teeth. We rebounded a little during the 90s, and how did we do it? My wife worked off the farm, and I worked my 3 children to death, and that's how we got there. We built equity back into our place. Times are a little better, but I will say in the last 3 years we've been losing equity again. We're rebounding right back to where we were in the 80s. There's been a couple points here that I want to talk about today that we've been close to, but we haven't really addressed a couple of them, or one of them in particular. And I'm a great admirer of Carl Wilkins, who is an economist that did a lot of advisory work for this city down here through the 3 decades of the 50s, 60s, and 40s, 50s, and 60s. And as you probably know, Carl said that the only true wealth comes from the land, and the only renewable wealth comes from agriculture. And most of us are proud to be the fact that we are the true wealth of the land. Anything but is unearned income. It's in the form of loans and subsidies and that sort of thing. And that's all a negative drain on our economy. And my point is here that this year animals and agriculture committed $50,000 of that new wealth, or $50 million, excuse me, of that new wealth to our nation. But we still feel pretty bad about it out in agriculture, because if the parity level has been 67.2%, if you take in from 1962 to 2002, excuse me. And if that parity level would have been 100%, we could have contributed another $25 million to that. And then if you take Carl's multiplication factor times 7, that would have been another $175 million that we would contribute to this nation and to our country. And if you stop and think about that and go back over all the years and calculate it out, I haven't had the time to do that, and then compound the interest on that, that maybe is what has brought up this national debt that we have now. That figure would probably be equal to that. So if the parity had been in there a long time ago for our products, we probably wouldn't be where we are in the national debt today. And if we return that parity to it, and agriculture is one of the few industries that are left in this country that is produced and processed and everything in the United States. Every other industry is exiting us real fast. And that we are the only hope for democracy in this country, because as Carl Wilkins points out, the countries like Russia that have lost their income when they went into a socialist system, the animals became worthless. They butchered them. Right now, Russia's trying to rebuild that. I sold cattle to Russia last year to help them rebuild their herds. Countries like India that never had a value because they were religious purposes on their cattle, they've been struggling for years. Animal agriculture and all of agriculture in general are the only hope for democracy in this country. It's not just about keeping farmers on the land, it's about keeping democracy in the United States. And the other point I want to bring up here real quick, and I know I'm out of time, but today we've not heard much about these free trade agreements. These free trade agreements are one of the biggest hindrance on agriculture that we have right out here today. I thank you.
Thank you. My name is Brother David Andrews. I work for Food and Water Watch. I have been a participant in the agricultural work of this country for the last 30 years at least. I traveled throughout the South with Raffi and Mary Klaus, working for the Poultry Growers Associations. I've been a member of OCM for 15 years, an officer of the board. I served on the Farm Foundation's Future of Animal Agriculture in North America and the Pew Commission's study of industrial agriculture. And I've listened to the voices of the people of the land. And I have to say that I appreciate all that you have been doing at the Department of Justice and the Department of Agriculture. But I also look at these issues not simply as legislative or governmental. I look at these issues as moral issues. You've heard these stories, and how can you not attach a moral meaning to the stories of the suffering of our farmers and of our landscape and of our animals and of our environment? There are many levels at which this issue comes together here around the issue of concentration, many ways in which the issue of competition is a part of the analysis. And my hope is that as we go along, that we will use the moral force of our consciences to make the dramatic changes beyond what we're proposing now that need to happen in rural America in order to revitalize our landscape. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nancy Romer, and I'm with the Brooklyn Food Coalition. We're an advocacy and educational group that's trying to make changes in the food system and to mobilize people around it. And I want to thank the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Justice, but particularly I want to thank all the farmers here and all of the advocates who've really given me an education that I will try to bring back to the people that I work with. The problem I want to address is climate change, and I don't know if it was addressed in the very first session because I didn't get here until after that. But the intense concentration of agribusiness and food retail forces growing transportation and packaging practices that are harmful to the environment and contribute to climate change. They make local and regional food systems less viable because of their competitive edge, because they control so much of the market. The high social costs of corporate industrial agriculture and food retail are going to be a major factor in undoing our nation in terms of climate change. If you look at some of the research that's been organized by Bill McKibben with his latest book, Earth by Anna Lappé, Diet for a Hot Planet, the wisdom is that about 1/3 of greenhouse gases that are being emitted today are due to agriculture, and that the full oil-based practices that where the agriculture is expelling carbon rather than sequestering it, all of the transportation and retail costs associated with it. So if that figure is accurate, and it seems to be, the forced farming techniques that the major players are putting upon all of our farmers are forcing people to contribute to all of this climate change. The large contractors, seed and input companies, and retail corporations are dictating methods and prices. We need to mitigate climate change, to adapt to climate change. We're going to see increased flooding. We're going to see increased hailstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes. This is all going to happen. We need to have regional and local food systems. And I'd like you to take all of the capacities of your departments and help to change some of the rules to support local and regional agricultural systems so that we can survive climate change when it happens.
Hi, my name is Angelina Salbalem. I'm from New York. I'm representing Slow Food, an organization of thousands of people across this country who are interested in food and farming, in sustainable food and farming. And first, I also want to thank the USDA and the DOJ for having these hearings. And also, I really want to thank the farmers. I am one of those consumers that does not know a lot about our farm system. I grew up in the Bronx, and we don't have a lot of farming happening in the Bronx. And I really appreciate all of the things that I've learned today. I wanted to talk a little bit about biodiversity and how consolidation of big agriculture causes a less diverse system. Has anybody heard of a Newtown pippin apple? Anybody from New York know what that is? Not a lot of hands. Maybe, okay, a few though. The Newtown pippin apple is a delicious green-skinned apple that comes from New York, that actually comes from New York City, from Queens County. And I did not learn about this until about 6 months ago. I was born and raised in New York and have been going to supermarkets and different food outlets in New York my whole life, and I have never seen a Newtown pippin apple. The thing about corporate consolidation of agriculture, from seed supply to farming to packing, to all of these different layers involved in the food system, is that it doesn't allow us to have choice. And that's what this country is about, right? Freedom of choice. This is what democracy is, that we have a choice. It reduces our choice. It doesn't allow us to choose different options. So there's about 5 to 7 varieties in my local store, and pretty much anyone can name them, from Kansas to Missouri to Oregon. We all have the same ones, right? Red Delicious, Granny Smith, and some other ones, Rome apples. But the Newtown pippin is an apple that is not represented in my local store. And I can only go to a farmer's market to get it. And part of that is because of the seed supply, and also because of the consolidation of retail outlets that only choose very specific kinds of produce and kinds of products to sell. And so it's reducing my choice as a consumer. And I would say to you that I urge you that after a year of study to please take action, because I would like to choose what kind of food I have, and I would like more options. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bill Roenick with the National Chicken Council. I would like to say for the record that with corn at $6 a bushel, soybean meal $350 a ton, I'm not aware of any chicken companies that are currently making any profits. Nonetheless, we continue to increase production, and I think, at least for the growers and other parts of the food chain, that's a good thing, but at the moment it's not a good thing for our profits. The broiler industry has been vertically integrated for 5 decades. So we have a history, we have a track record. Most broiler companies have a listing of farmers, family farmers, who would like to grow chickens or would like to add capacity to the houses they already have. With all due respect to Ms. Ruddle, I would like to ask a question, if I may. If she's still here, perhaps she'd like to answer. But as I understand her comments, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but 5 years ago, Ms. Ruddle said she decided to begin to grow chickens. That's good. We appreciate the 20-some thousand family farms who grow chickens for us. They're dedicated, they're hardworking, they are a major part of why we are successful as an industry, why we're able to offer the best meat value to consumers. So without growers, we would not be successful, and if we keep growing, we're going to need more growers. But my question would be, we have a track record, we have a history. If you, 5 years ago, you either went to the company or you went to the lender or you went to both and said, okay, is this a wise investment? Is this going to cash flow? Is this going to work? Somebody must have said yes. Or you must have said, okay, I'm willing to take the risk and hope for the best. But if I understand her comments correctly, and I don't mean any disrespect, Ms. Ruddle, if you're still here, but why, 5 years ago, knowing what you know, or at least I think you must have known, why would you get into a business that you feel, at least from your comments, that's not a very good business? And if that could be explained to me, that would be a good takeaway I'd like to have from the meeting, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah Bernhardt, and I'm here on behalf of the National Young Farmers Coalition and the nonprofit organization The Greenhorns, whose mission is to recruit, support, and promote young and beginning farmers in America. Secretary Vilsack has stated a goal of recruiting 100,000 new farmers as the current population of farmers rapidly retires. We're working hard to help our country reach this goal, but young and beginning farmers face many barriers, including access to land and access to capital. In the current marketplace, young and beginning farmers can't begin to compete with large corporations who do have that access. Additionally, I grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota, but I was never encouraged to pursue farming as a career because all the farmers I knew were in agreement that farming is a terrible way to make a living. My dad took an off-farm job in the 80s to supplement our farm income, and statistically in 2007, 90% of all farm household income in our country came from off-farm sources. My own parents and families of other young farmers I know are reluctant to support our efforts to farm because they know how hard we will struggle to make a profit in this industry. So if we're to reach Secretary Vilsack's goal of 100,000 new farmers in America, aspiring farmers need to feel confident that they are entering a fair marketplace and that they will be able to support themselves and their families when they pursue farming as a career. Before I finish, I want to also take a moment to thank the many farmers in the room who, despite enduring years of frustration with the industry and likely quickly approaching retirement, have not given up on advocating for the future of American agriculture. Your perseverance and patriotism inspires us, and we really thank you for being here today. And additionally, we also want to thank the sign language interpreters in the room. Thanks.
John, I sat back here and I listened to this, and I wasn't going to say anything until this guy from the Chicken Council got up. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm the one that Ms. Varney was talking about in Normal, Alabama. I represent or help represent 650 chicken growers in the state of Alabama. And I'll be out of all the 650 of them, there's 2 that was not afraid to come up here. I'm not saying I'm brave. I'm saying I'm a proud American, I'm a veteran, and I need the right to be able to talk to y'all today. This guy says that there's people waiting in line, and he's probably right, because they want to be a part of somebody that produces cheap food for y'all. The problem we've got, John, is we don't have anybody to monitor them and work to take care of us. These gypsum rules will probably be the best thing we've ever had if they pass, and I hope they do. You know, it's hard for me to talk to people about something like he's talking about there when I know for a fact that I got 45 growers in my county, in St. Clair County, Alabama. Out of the 45 growers, 42 of them are not making a decent living. If they're making money, why do they need more growers? If they're not making money, they'd be just like us. They'd go out of the business. I can rant and rave all day, y'all, but this is a proud country, and I'm probably one of them as proud as they are in here, other than the rest of the chicken growers. John, we need y'all's help. We need the rules passed, but we need you to be watchdogs for us as farmers. Thank you.
I knew I should have gone before him. My name is Rhonda Perry. I'm a livestock and grain farmer from Central Missouri. I'm with the Missouri Rural Crisis Center, and as part of our organization, we work with family farmers to direct market independent family farm-raised pork. And I just feel like saying, after what we just heard, that we desperately need you to act on behalf of independent family farm livestock producers so that we are not in the situation that we just heard from the poultry growers. We can't afford to take hogs and cattle down the road of poultry, especially after what we heard today, and that I know you've heard over this entire period of time of listening sessions. In the hog industry, because I tend to represent hog farmers, what we've seen in Missouri is we've lost 90% of the hog farmers in our state in the last 25 years. We went from 23,000 hog farmers marketing 3 million head of hogs to 3,000 hog farmers marketing 3 million head of hogs. We didn't change the number of hogs that were being marketed or produced in our state. We just transferred that wealth and that knowledge and that economics from our rural communities from independent family farmers to a few, very small number of corporate packers who now own the hogs in our state. We didn't do that because hog farmers just decided, you know, this is a lot of work. I think I'll just get out of the business, take a vacation, work 2 jobs in town to maintain my row crop operations. This happened because family farmers like myself and my family went from having 5 markets to market our hogs on a weekly basis to being lucky if we had 1 take it or leave it opportunity to market our hogs on a weekly basis. I think I just got to address the Iowa hog farmer. I am so glad that somebody in Iowa is doing well raising hogs. But I think it's USDA's job to deal with and address the issues that put those 90% of hog farmers out of business. And I'm going to skip right to the consumer piece. It's been a really fun day hearing how a lot of what's going on in this industry has been consumer driven. Apparently, consumers are demanding sushi bars in their stores. They're demanding dry cleaners. It's amazing all the things consumers have been demanding, and as a consumer, I have missed out on all that. But what I think we heard here today is that consumers are joining with family farmers in demanding what they really need and what family farmers really need, and that is a level playing field in the ability of family farmers to make a decent living and consumers to have access to quality, healthy food. That's all we're asking from our government. We're not asking for a handout or hand up or anything else. We're just asking for the ability to compete. And we can compete. We can outcompete. The reality is, if you're the only player left standing, you can say you're the most efficient one. But if you have to compete with independent family farmers, you're out of business. And we hope you'll make that a reality for us.
My name is Eric Hedrick. I'm from the Contractor Poultry Growers of the Virginias, and my comment is directed towards a gentleman that said she wondered why Valerie Ruddle got into the business. Well, I bought the largest poultry farm in West Virginia and Virginia 5 years ago, too. And I can tell you the reason why she got into it is the company lied. When you put numbers down on a piece of paper to get the bankers to loan you the money, and then it don't follow through, how do you make bank payments? I started raising 5 years ago, raising a 4-pound chicken in about 37 or 38 days. Last year, the company says, well, we're sorry, sir. We want to cut back to a 375 chicken. Where's my other payments coming from? We've heard a lot of information here today, and I really didn't want to get up here and speak. But we really need these rules, and we need them quick. Thank you.
I'm Peter Van Skyk. I'm from Vermont, came down here, and I don't represent anybody except myself. I'm somebody who started looking at the food I eat a couple of years ago. And what I found was confirmed by what I've been reading about the workshops. People who are growing the food that I consume don't make a sustainable living. I've talked to and done some numbers and talked to farmers, dairy farmers, and I did some wage calculations using the Vermont living wage for what farmers should be paid for the amount of time they spend producing milk that I consume. And it was over $100,000 a year. I mean, if you figure out, 110 hours a week, or if you're doing a concentrated operation, maybe more. If you've got labor to supervise, maybe more. If you're doing rotational grazing, maybe it's a little less. But it's not a sustainable way to earn a living. So when Bert Ford talked about the notion about suppliers and the notion of water betting, when the supplier drives down the price that is paid, that it pays to a particular supplier, and yet the whole industry of suppliers needs a certain amount, or a particular supplier needs a certain amount of money to get by, what happens? Well, increases prices for other customers, but there are other kinds of shortcuts that happen, and those shortcuts relate to the problems that were identified by the woman from Brooklyn, and that is you end up having shortcuts taken in terms of the environmental sustainability of the practices. You start taking shortcuts in terms of like, do you do a winter cover crop, do you not? I ended up going up and talking to people that ran a 2-day conference on phosphorus into Lake Champlain. And boy, is that a hot topic. I talked to the guy who ran agriculture and markets, and as soon as I just whispered the word phosphorus, and it's because he knows that every time there's a heavy rain, phosphorus is running off of those lands that are being overworked and aren't being properly attended to because people have got bank payments and they've got mortgages to pay, and they just can't make a go of it. So when Bert talked about the need for study of monopsony, I really thought that made sense. And when I heard the woman, Mary Henderson, I think her name is, talk about how there are other things that need to be considered within an adequate antitrust jurisprudence, it's obvious that consumer welfare is only a part of the picture. There's got to be we've got to have an antitrust law that looks up and down the whole supply chain and looks at farmer welfare and not just consumer welfare, looks at farm labor welfare and not just these other things, and then looks at the welfare of the environment in which the farmers are producing. And it's the monopsony power of these concentrated purchases of farm goods that are stressing the people and the natural systems that are producing food. So one thing you might do on the long term is to follow Bert's suggestion, which is to really take a look at what's different about monopsony power. Right now, antitrust jurisprudence isn't solving the problem. Thank you very much. And by the way, I appreciate the workshops because they brought out the fact to national attention that we've got a whole lot of people besides consumers that are very concerned about fairness within the antitrust system that's creating low, or is contributing or is allowing to happen these low prices for producers. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Passo Sen, and I'm with the United Food and Commercial Workers. I want to thank the Justice Department and the USDA for holding this series of workshops. And since the subject of today's workshop is retail, I'd like to bring us back to retail for a little bit and talk about international precedents. The Competition Commission in the United Kingdom has investigated Walmart and Tesco and Sainsbury for anti-competitive practices. The Competition Commission in Mexico has similarly investigated Walmart, and their counterparts in South Korea have investigated Walmart and Carrefour. And we would strongly urge the antitrust authorities here in the US to follow these international leads by investigating concentration in food retailing here in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bill Bullard, representing RCAF USA. And the industry segments that are working hard to oppose what you're doing and to oppose the GIPSA rule are attempting aggressively to dismiss all the evidence out there that we are in a state of crisis and this crisis is urgent. For example, they claim that for the last 20 years, we've had 4 packers controlling about 80% of the industry. Therefore, there can be no urgency associated with this. But in 1990, 20 years ago, we had 250 firms that actually slaughtered cattle, were market outlets. Today, we're down fewer than 92. So those 4 major packers in 1990 reigned over 250 market outlets. Today they reign over less than 100. Also during that period, we saw a tremendous consolidation in the feeding sector. 30,000 independent feeders left the industry. What we're seeing is the control that the packers had exclusively over the feeders is now being pushed into the supply chain and is affecting the cow-calf producers. We've never witnessed this level of concentration in the history of our industry, and the situation is urgent. We also hear that we can justify the loss of farmers and ranchers because they're more efficient. They're producing more beef on the hoof than ever before. That is true, they are. But at the same time, our industry is shrinking in terms of the size of the cattle herd, in terms of the size of the number of producers, and as our industry shrinks, we are unable to keep pace with the growth in domestic beef consumption. And we're making up the difference with imports. And if you calculate the beef equivalent of the live cattle and the beef we import about 5 million cattle, which is approximately about the same amount of cattle that they claim have been displaced because of our increased productivity. They also claim that the price spreads do not matter. They claim that we've introduced boxed beef and other market efficiencies and other processes that cost more. Fact of the matter is, when ERS calculates that data, they use a standard animal in 1980, cut in a standard way, sold in standard form. In 2009, they used that same standard animal, cut up the same standard way in standard form. Thank you.
Hi, John. How you doing? My name is Dave Murphy. I'm the founder and executive director of Food Democracy Now!. We're a grassroots sustainable agriculture advocacy group based in Clear Lake, Iowa. I'd just like to say it's really an honor to be here today. We've traveled, like many of the other people in this room, to every one of these hearings because we think it's an important process to witness. We also think it's one of the most important things that you can do, that this administration can do, to restore a basic sense of fairness and justice and democracy to how our food is produced. I'd like to say on behalf of Credo Action and Food Democracy Now!, we'd like to submit over 200,000 comments and signatures to the USDA and the DOJ. I also want to thank all our coalition partners. Together we made we got 250,000, 250,000 signatures. I think that's a very significant number. It says, one, that the American people really realize that there is something fundamentally wrong with our food system. It's pretty incredible that you can get 250,000 people to make a comment on enforcement of antitrust laws in food and agriculture. A few years ago, 5, 10 years ago, most people would not have known that. Today, there's a growing movement of people out there, and the fact is the facts are getting out. I'd like to say the American Farm Bureau says they're the voice of agriculture. Well, today, Food Democracy Now! Would like to announce that we're the voice of the American people. And people, that's pretty funny, but the truth is about the same in the first statement. And that's a sad fact. We're here today because agribusiness has walked all over justice, the laws, and democracy in this country. And I think it's time for this administration to do the right thing. I want you to know that 250,000 people stand behind you as you take action and you enforce these laws. We don't want just some simple enforcement, some simple fines. We really want some of these worst violators broken up, and I think that's the type of action that the American people and our family farmers deserve. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that concludes our public testimony section, and I appreciate everybody who has come here today to either provide comments or if you just came here to listen, all of our panelists that came here, and I thank all the panelists that have participated in all of our workshops and anybody who've come and visited with us and talked to us and provided us comments. I also thank all the institutions all over the country that we went and visited who were very gracious to us to allow us to come there and take over their place and completely run the workshop from there. And so I just want to thank everybody for attending. I don't know if you have any comments you'd like to make, but I just, again, I thank you and have safe travels.